Sometimes, the ones who promise you forever are the ones who push you closest to the edge. A billionaire shoved his pregnant wife down the stairs. His mistress smirked until karma hit. Lana balanced the tray in her hands, a gentle smile tugging at her lips as she walked down the hallway. Pancakes, orange juice, and his favorite espresso, just like every Sunday morning. Her satin robe fluttered with each step, the baby inside her kicking softly. She nudged their penthouse bedroom door open, but then she froze. Laughter, not just any kind. Cole's voice, low, flirty, and a woman's. Sweet, intimate, too close. Lana's fingers shook. The tray clattered to the marble floor with a sharp crash. Plates shattered, just like her heart. The door flew open. Standing there was Brooke in Lana's satin robe, the very one she wore on their honeymoon in Paris. Brooke gave her a slow once-over, smirking like a queen who had already won. "Oops," she said lazily, flipping her hair back. "Didn't know you were home." Behind her, Cole stepped out, shirtless, rubbing his neck like he had nothing to hide. Lana's mouth opened, but no words came, only pain. Burning, blinding pain that stole her breath. Brooke sauntered closer, lips curled in mockery. "Nice robe, right?" Cole added. "I look better in it than you ever did." Lana's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. Her knees went weak. She tried to speak, to ask why, but Cole beat her to it. He looked at her like she was something stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "You weren't supposed to stay this long," he said coldly. "This marriage, it was just pity. A charity case. You were never in my league, Lana." She stumbled back as if he'd struck her. Her lips trembled. What are you saying?" Cole's tone sharpened. "You were poor, damaged. My father begged me to marry you, said it would make the press love us. You were just a tool." "I never loved you, Lana." She gasped, hand flying to her belly. Tears burned down her face. "But I'm carrying your child." Brooke rolled her eyes. "A mistake," she said flatly. "One will fix." Lana turned to run. Her heart pounded. Her baby. She had to protect her baby. Then it happened. A hard shove. She felt it right between her shoulder blades. Her foot missed the top stair. She screamed. Her body crashed down the grand staircase, each marble step slamming into her like stone fists. At the bottom, silence. Blood pooled beneath her head. Her robe soaked red. She didn't move. Cole stood at the top, chest heaving. "She tripped," he muttered. She tripped. But Brooke was already dialing. "Someone call the lawyer," she said flatly. "This could get messy." Cole pulled out his phone. His hands shook, but still, he said, "Get rid of her stuff. We'll say she was unstable." His hands trembled, but still he said, "Get rid of her things. We'll say she was hysterical." Down below, Lana blinked slowly. Her vision blurred. Her mouth tasted blood. Brooke looked down, eyes cold. "Guess the charity case finally cracked," she said with a laugh. Lana tried to lift her hand, but it was useless. Pain screamed through every inch of her body. The baby inside her didn't move. Panic surged through her. Not like this. She couldn't let it end like this. Not for her, not for the child she had dreamed of holding. With the last strength she had, she turned her head slightly and whispered to her belly, "Please stay with me. No matter what they do, you stay strong. We're going to survive this, I swear." Her voice was faint, but her heart was fierce. She closed her eyes, letting the darkness take her. Not in defeat, but in promise. One breath left, one vow sealed in blood and pain. They thought she was done. But Lana would rise, and when she did, they'd regret ever laying a hand on her. Her body ached. Her head pounded as she lay there half-conscious on the cold marble floor. She had survived the fall. But the silence afterward was louder than the pain. Cole stood at the top of the stairs, staring down at her crumpled body without the slightest hint of concern. The man she had once loved, who she believed had loved her back, was now just a stranger. She could hear him breathing, but he said nothing. The emptiness in his eyes hurt more than her injuries. Brooke's laugh echoed in the distance, mocking, cruel, like Lana's suffering was some kind of joke. Lana's mind spun in confusion and disbelief. The image of Cole, her husband, the man who promised her forever, just standing there cold and detached. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but her body refused to move. Blood trickled from her forehead, staining the white floor beneath her. Every attempt to shift, to breathe, felt like war. Still, she tried. She gasped for air, fighting the darkness that kept trying to swallow her whole. Her thoughts locked on the baby, that tiny life inside her. She had to live, for her child. But the pain? It was too much. Everything was slipping away. Cole's footsteps sounded distant, like from another world. Was he really leaving her to die? Was this really how it ended? The only thing grounding her was the sound of her own breath, ragged, shallow. For a moment, all she heard was the harsh thumping of her heart. "Stay with me," she whispered. But no one was listening. The media storm hit almost instantly. The headlines were scripted like a movie. Cole, billionaire heir to a global luxury empire, was the victim of his unstable wife. Lana, the woman who had once been the envy of every woman in the city, was now painted as the villain in her own story. Cole's PR team spun the narrative flawlessly, making sure the world believed the fall was nothing more than a tragic accident, the result of Lana's fragile mental state. Cole, the perfect husband, just trying to protect his family from a mentally unstable wife. Clips of their wedding day flashed on the screen, juxtaposed cruelly against headlines calling her dangerous and unfit. The news anchor's voice scraped her nerves like nails on a chalkboard. Lana sat in the dim light of her small Brooklyn apartment, eyes locked on the screen, unable to look away. She wasn't surprised. This was what Cole did best: manipulate, twist, spin the truth until he looked like a hero. He had turned her pain into a PR campaign, her silence into guilt, her fall into his victory lap. Her hands shook as she grabbed the remote and muted the television. The silence that followed was even worse, deafening. She had always known Cole had a gift for shaping reality. But this was beyond anything she could have imagined. His carefully crafted image, his wealth, his charm, his picture-perfect life was all a lie. And now the world believed it. Even brands she once modeled for had dropped her overnight. Talk shows that had once celebrated her grace now dissected her mental state like she was a ticking bomb. The same people who once admired her now saw her as the unstable wife who had ruined everything, the woman who had fallen apart. She could feel their judgment bleeding through the screen. She had to fight back. She couldn't let him destroy what was left of her. But how? She had nothing. No power, no money, not even the love of her husband. Everything was slipping through her fingers. All she could do was watch while the life she fought for disappeared. Lana's departure wasn't dramatic. No tearful goodbyes, no grand exit. That would have suited a woman of her former status. Instead, they said it was quiet, silent. She rented a modest apartment in a quieter part of the city, far from the Manhattan penthouse, far from the luxurious life she'd once shared with Cole. It was a world away from marble floors and designer gowns, but it was hers now, and she accepted it. She unpacked alone. No help, no friends, just the sound of her baby's sonogram in her purse and the haunting echo of betrayal in her mind. She spent her days in solitude, carefully planning her next move. Going public with her side of the story was out of the question. Cole's media reach was too powerful. Instead, she focused on the one thing that could ruin him: the prenup. The one he thought she would never find. He'd buried it behind NDAs and routine paperwork. But Lana was done playing blind. Every move she made was calculated, every decision measured. She had nothing left except her determination. The first few weeks were the hardest. Lana battled the urge to call old friends, to reach for comfort from people who used to adore her. But she couldn't afford weakness. Not now. She had to be strategic. She turned every sleepless night into a mission. Every tear became fuel. She spent long nights on her laptop, digging deep into Cole's business dealings, researching, cross-referencing. She needed evidence, proof that he wasn't the man he pretended to be. She didn't know how long it would take, but she knew one thing for sure: she would make him pay. Noah was the only person who knew about Lana's search for the truth. They hadn't spoken much in the past few weeks, but now he was the only ally she had left. With connections in the legal world, he was exactly who she needed. When Lana stumbled upon the loophole in the prenup, she knew right away he was the one who could help her exploit it. Together, they pored over the contract late into the night. Lana's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. But there it was, buried deep in the fine print. A clause Cole never thought she'd find. It granted her full financial independence in the event of his betrayal. She had been naive once, trusting him, believing his promises. But now everything was clear. Cole had underestimated her. With Noah's help, Lana began to strategize. She couldn't go public, yet. The media would twist it, just like they always had. But she could use the clause to take back what was rightfully hers, the wealth she was denied, the control she had never been allowed to have. Cole had built his empire on lies. But Lana? She was going to tear it down, piece by piece. Flashes of memory haunted her, images of the girl she used to be. Innocent, hopeful, blind to the manipulation wrapped around her. Cole's family had always treated her kindly, with open arms and sweet smiles, but it was a game. They knew exactly how to play her, how to make her feel like she belonged in their glittering world. But it was all fake. It was always part of the plan. She remembered their wedding day, how Cole's mother had smiled at her with eyes that were too cold to match her lips, the private meetings with Cole's father, how they had subtly guided her into signing the prenup. They called it a formality, just something every wealthy couple did. Now Lana saw it for what it truly was. A trap. A way to ensure she had no power, no voice, no future without Cole. They had convinced her that love would be enough, that they would protect her. It had all been a lie. Her family, her friends, they didn't know what was happening behind closed doors. She wasn't a wife. She was a pawn. And Brooke? Brooke had always been there, lingering in the background, pretending to be a friend. But now Lana saw the truth. Brooke had never been her friend. She had waited, calculated, biding her time until Lana was weak enough to strike. Now Brooke wore Lana's life like a designer gown, flaunting it for the world to admire. The tabloids loved her. Brooke was the perfect woman, stunning, confident. Now she was Cole's new partner. She had replaced Lana in the public eye, flipping the narrative, turning Lana into a delusional woman obsessed with her husband and unable to let go. It made Lana sick to her core, watching Brooke play the role so perfectly. But Lana wasn't fooled. She knew the truth. Brooke wasn't the woman Cole truly wanted. She was a placeholder, a tool to keep up appearances. And the more Brooke tried to erase Lana, the more Lana felt her anger burn hotter. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming everything that had been stolen from her. The whispers started almost immediately. Lana was dropped by her most lucrative brand deals. No one wanted to be associated with the woman whose life had publicly collapsed. Her name, once synonymous with elegance and success, had become a symbol of failure. The online world turned against her. They called her delusional, obsessed, crazy. Former friends unfollowed her. Bloggers mocked her. Her image, once on billboards, was replaced by Brooke's smiling face. Every headline felt like a knife, slicing into her over and over. Each time she read them, her heart shattered just a little more. The people she once worked with, the ones who praised and trusted her, they all turned their backs. They sided with Cole, with his picture-perfect new life, with Brooke. But Noah, ever the loyal friend, refused to let her give up. He kept calling, kept urging her to fight. "You still have a chance, Lana. Don't let them destroy you like this. You're better than this," he'd say. And he was right, but it felt like the world was working against her. Every single day, her reputation was in ruins, and every attempt to rebuild it felt like trying to scale a mountain with broken legs. Still, despite the crushing humiliation, Lana knew she couldn't let it end here. There was more at stake now than pride. There was her baby, a tiny heartbeat, a future she hadn't planned for, but now clung to like a lifeline. She needed to prove to herself and to her child that she could rise from the ashes of her shattered life. No matter how hard it got, no matter how long it took, she would fight. The world might have turned its back on her, but she wasn't done. Lana's investigation into Cole's empire led her into a labyrinth of corruption and deceit. It was darker than she imagined, filled with forged documents, bribes, dirty money, and carefully buried secrets. Each file she opened felt like peeling back a new layer of rot. The deeper she went, the filthier it became. But the more she uncovered, the more it became clear. Cole's wealth was built on lies. There were hidden deals, backroom exchanges, a sprawling web of shady characters who had helped him rise. But the most devastating discovery? A link to her own father. Lana's heart sank as she scrolled through the documents. He had secretly funded Cole's early ventures, bank records, wire transfers, signed agreements. The man who had always seemed like an honest businessman, the one person she had trusted beyond all doubt, had been a part of the deception all along. He had betrayed her, just as much as Cole had. She stared at the screen, breath caught in her throat. How? How could he? Her own father. The realization hit her like a freight train. This wasn't just about Cole anymore. This was about everything. Her family, her trust, her very identity. Lana wasn't sure how to process it all. But one thing was crystal clear. Cole and her father had both betrayed her. And she would make them both pay. It was in the quiet moments, those fleeting seconds alone in her small Brooklyn apartment, that she found the strength to keep going. The world had thrown every possible blow her way. But then came the sound. The heartbeat. During her checkup, the steady rhythmic thumping of her baby's heart filled the room, and something shifted inside her. Up until that moment, she had barely been holding on. The days had blurred, her body moved, but her mind felt detached, numb from everything. That tiny pulse, it was all the motivation she needed. She could do this. She had to, for her child. She would never let her baby grow up in a world ruled by Cole's lies and cruelty. Every time she felt like quitting, when the weight of public humiliation and her shattered life crushed her, she remembered that heartbeat. Her child needed her to fight, and fight she would. She walked out of the clinic that day with tear-stained cheeks and fire in her chest. The sound of that heartbeat gave her clarity. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the future, for her unborn child, for justice. The battle was only beginning. And Lana was ready. She could hear the voices of betrayal fading into the background. All that remained was the rhythm of her baby's heart, and the fire inside her, burning hotter with every breath. Determined to reclaim what was hers, Lana began gathering evidence. She wasn't going to let the lies stand. She started recording everything: conversations, phone calls, text messages, anything that could prove the truth. She knew she couldn't trust anyone, not even Noah. No matter how loyal he seemed, this was her war. And she had to win it her way. Paranoia crept in. She rechecked her locks, slept with her laptop under her pillow. Every backup file encrypted, hidden. She spent hours compiling files, every document, every thread of information stored neatly on her laptop. There were contracts, emails, photos. Everything she had uncovered about Cole's dark dealings. It became her weapon, a digital archive of betrayal. Every lie, every cheat, every crooked move. She was going to bring it all to light. Lana had learned the hard way that people couldn't be trusted. But truth? Truth didn't lie. She would use it to ruin him. The world would finally see Cole for the manipulative fraud he really was, and she would watch as he crumbled beneath the weight of his own deception. Then, one evening, an unexpected call came in. It was from an old maid who used to work in Cole's mansion. Her voice trembled, but her words were sharp and clear. "I know what happened," she whispered. Lana's heart pounded as the woman continued. She had seen everything. She knew Brooke's plan, how she had been scheming to take Lana down long before the fall ever happened. Brooke hadn't just stepped into Lana's life as a mistress. No, she had carefully orchestrated Lana's downfall. The maid revealed that Brooke had been working with Cole, feeding him information, tracking Lana's every move. She had planted the seeds of doubt so deeply that Cole had no choice but to lose faith in his own wife. Lana's stomach twisted as she listened. Brooke had been playing a much bigger game than she ever realized. But now she had the truth. The woman knew too much, and Lana would make sure her story got out. The final blow came when Lana stumbled upon a hidden folder on one of Cole's encrypted drives. Footage that revealed Brooke's true intentions. It was a video, grainy but clear, of Brooke and Cole standing in the shadows, speaking in hushed voices. They were plotting Lana's destruction. Brooke stood tall, confident. "She'll fall," her voice echoed, cold and calculated, "and I'll rise." Cole stood beside her, silent, not objecting, not resisting. He knew exactly what she was doing, and he let it happen. Lana felt the blood drain from her face as she watched. Every frame, every word, confirmation. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't obsessed. She'd been right all along, and now she had the evidence. It was time to fight back. Time to take back everything she had lost. Cole and Brooke wouldn't see it coming. Lana sat in front of her laptop, her hands trembling as she hovered over the send button. Years of files, damning footage, forged documents, all neatly packaged. She clicked. The sound of that click echoed like an explosion in her ears. She had spent endless nights collecting evidence, organizing every scrap of truth. Now, the world was about to see the truth. Cole's empire, built on deception, manipulation, and lies, was about to crumble. By morning, headlines exploded across every major outlet. Scandal rocks billionaire's empire. Ex-wife releases shocking footage of deception and fraud. The news spread like wildfire. Lana didn't need to check her phone. She could feel the heat of it. It was burning through every connection Cole had built over the years, his perfect image falling apart piece by piece. And Lana? She smiled. She had fought for this moment. She had sacrificed everything for this. And now, the world finally knew who Cole really was. Chaos followed. The media, once his weapon, turned against him. Investors pulled out. Lawsuits stacked higher by the hour. Lana's name became a symbol of vengeance, of justice, of survival. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt alive. Her heart beat to the rhythm of justice. But with the truth came danger. She knew Cole wouldn't take this lying down. There was no telling how far he'd go to protect what remained of his empire. This was just the beginning. But as the world watched the storm unfold, Lana knew one thing for certain. There was no turning back. Cole would fall, and she would be the one to push him. Cole stood before a crowd of reporters. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. His once flawless reputation was crumbling in real time. The world had turned on him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Cole, do you deny the allegations? What's your response to the leaked footage?" A reporter shouted from the crowd. Cole's lips trembled. The questions came faster, harder. "Are you guilty of fraud? Did you manipulate your wife?" He tried to collect himself, but the truth had already set fire to everything he once held dear. His perfect image, his wealth, his power, gone. The press had turned against him, painting him as a criminal, a liar, a man who had destroyed everyone in his path. Lana's words echoed in his mind. "You never thought I'd fight back, but I did." The investigation into his actions had begun, and the world was watching. News outlets swarmed, digging through his past, unearthing every buried secret. The police inquiry was just the beginning. The pressure was suffocating. Cameras flashed endlessly as Cole's mind raced. He knew this was just the beginning of a nightmare. But the truth was out now, and there was no hiding from it. The man who was once untouchable had become a public disgrace. And it was all because of Lana. It was a night meant for celebration. The luxury investor gala, where the elite gathered to exchange promises and secure fortunes. Lana, radiant and unshaken, entered the venue. She was dressed in a stunning gown, every inch the image of grace and power. Cole was there too, standing tall in his tailored suit, his smile stiff, his eyes uneasy. But it was clear. He wasn't the man he had been just days before. The whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. His reputation had taken a brutal hit, yet here he was, still pretending. Pretending that everything was fine. Pretending his world hadn't just collapsed under the weight of his own lies. As Lana stepped into the room, every head turned. She didn't care about the murmurs. She wasn't there for them. She wasn't there to play nice. She was there to show Cole. She was in control now. Brooke stood beside him, glowing, trying to cling to the remains of a life she thought she could keep. But Lana saw through it all. She saw the fear in Cole's eyes when their gazes met across the room. Their worlds collided in a silence thick with tension, and then it happened. The event took a sharp turn when Lana calmly walked toward the stage. Every eye followed her. She grabbed the microphone. Cole's face went pale. The entire room held its breath. Lana wasn't there just to look beautiful. She was there to make a statement. Her voice rang out, calm, clear, commanding. "Let the world know who Cole really is." The room froze. Lana hit play. The chilling sound of Brooke's voice echoed through the speakers. "She'll fall, and I'll rise." Her smug tone rang out like a death sentence. The powerful people in the room, investors, executives, media figures, watched in stunned silence as the footage played. It was a confession, a plan, carefully crafted, carried out with Cole right by her side. Lana's hand trembled as she watched it unfold on the massive screen. But there was no turning back now. The truth was out, and everyone who had once stood by Cole's side was now witnessing his collapse. Brooke's voice continued, unfiltered. "I've been planning this for months. Lana doesn't stand a chance. Cole and I will take everything from her." The looks of shock on the faces of the press, the investors, even Cole's own employees, were priceless. They had no idea. They had all believed the wrong woman. The woman they discarded, the one they mocked as unstable, was the very one now pulling the rug out from under them. Lana wasn't the woman they thought they knew. She was in control now. Cole tried to stop it, tried to move, but it was too late. The damage was done. The room erupted in gasps as reality set in. The magnitude of what had just been exposed rippled through every corner. And Brooke? She wasn't smiling anymore. She stood up, shaking with rage, her face flushed red. "You think you've won?" she screamed. "You think this will destroy me?" She lunged at Lana, her hand trembling, and slapped her hard across the face. The slap echoed through the room. But it wasn't the slap that stunned the crowd. It was what came next. Brooke's voice cracked as she shouted, "I had him. I had everything, and you took it from me." Cole, silent until now, finally snapped. He lunged at Brooke, grabbing her by the shoulders. "You've lost it. You think you can control this?" But it was too late. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second. The truth was out. And it wasn't just Lana who had been betrayed. It was everyone. The empire Cole had built was collapsing, and all anyone could do was watch. Lana stood tall, her gaze fixed on Cole. "You never thought I could take you down, did you?" she said. Then she took a deep breath and dropped the final blow. "I own 38% of your company." The room went dead silent. Her words landed like a bomb. Cole's face turned ghostly white. He had no power left. Lana wasn't just his ex-wife anymore. She was the one holding the keys to his empire. Justice wasn't a choice now. It was inevitable. The game was over. Cole didn't even have time to react. The sirens wailed. Police stormed into the ballroom. "You're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy," one officer announced, slapping handcuffs onto Cole's wrists in front of everyone. "You're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy," one officer said, slapping the handcuffs on him. Brooke collapsed, her body crumbling to the ground as flashing cameras captured every second of her disgrace. The once glamorous couple, now reduced to criminals, were dragged away. Their world was imploding, in real time. The room buzzed with the sound of camera shutters, but for Lana, it was something else. It was the sound of victory. Cole's empire had fallen, and she had been the one to bring it down. Justice had finally arrived. His empire had unraveled so fast, it was as if the very ground beneath him had been ripped away. Headlines screamed his name, splashed across every major outlet. And it wasn't just the press anymore, the authorities were in it now. Brooke, too, had been charged for her part in the lies, the fraud, the manipulation. She was cuffed and escorted out. Her once lavish life shattered in an instant. Lana stood firm, unwavering, as the world turned its back on the man who had once been everything to her. She wasn't a fragile woman who fell apart under pressure. She had fought, and now, backed by truth and strength, she stood taller than ever. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, but Lana didn't care. Her heart was solid, her spirit unshakable. She had survived everything they threw at her, and here she was, victorious. She didn't need Cole's empire. They had tried to crush her with betrayal, lies, and manipulation, but it had all led her here, to a place where she finally knew who she was. She had walked away from the wreckage that was once her life with Cole, and what did she have now? Her dignity, her child, and the unshakable knowledge that she could stand on her own. The judge's gavel echoed through the courtroom, signaling the official end of Cole's reign. He was a shadow of the man he once was, powerless. This was Lana's moment. The world would finally know her for who she really was, not a victim, but a fighter. She looked out at the crowd. They weren't staring at Cole anymore. They were looking at her. His world had crumbled. But hers? It had only just begun. It hadn't been easy. Nothing had been easy after the storm of betrayal. But as Lana looked down at the tiny face in her arms, everything finally made sense. Her daughter, Hope. A name chosen not just for its meaning, but for what it represented. A promise. A vow to never look back. To never let the darkness define what came next. Hope had been born from the deepest heartbreak Lana had ever known, but she was also the embodiment of everything Lana had fought for. In those quiet moments, when Lana held her baby close, she felt a kind of peace she hadn't known in years. She was starting anew, and nothing would stand in her way. The hospital room was flooded with soft, natural light. The darkness of the past? It felt like a distant memory now. With Hope in her arms, Lana knew she could face anything. She had already survived the worst. And now, with this new life resting in her arms, she had everything to live for. She looked down at her daughter's tiny face, the perfect blend of innocence and strength. Hope's presence reminded her that there was always a reason to keep going. No matter how many battles Lana had fought, she had won the most important one of all. Her future was finally clear. No more lies, no more betrayal. Just the pure, unwavering love of her daughter and the hope of a new life. Lana had been broken, yes, but she wasn't shattered. The ashes of her past, they had become her fuel. With the shares she had reclaimed and the wealth she earned through her own strength and intelligence, she began building something new, something hers. She founded a luxury firm, a business built from the ground up. No one to manipulate her, no one to control her. It wasn't just about the money, though that certainly helped. It was about power. It was about reclaiming the control that had been stripped from her for so long. The first few months were chaos, a whirlwind of decisions and dreams taking shape. Lana had no time for regrets. Every second was spent building her vision. She had something to prove, and every single day, she proved it. People didn't know what to expect from her. She wasn't the woman they remembered, the broken wife who had once crumbled under the weight of betrayal. She was someone entirely new, a woman with fire in her heart, a woman building her empire. And as her luxury firm grew, faster than anyone expected, Lana could feel the weight of the past lifting, piece by piece. She was reborn, and this time, no one would take what she had built. She didn't need Cole's money. She didn't need Brooke's games. She had her own empire now. Lana was no longer defined by her past. She was defined by her strength, her resilience, and her future. Noah had always been there. Even before the world fell apart, he had been her lawyer, her confidant, her constant. But as the days went on, something began to shift. It wasn't just about legal meetings or case strategy anymore. Late-night phone calls became more frequent. Their conversations moved from business to something more. He showed up when no one else did, bringing takeout when she forgot to eat, fixing her internet when it crashed before a pitch. Lana had never expected Noah to mean this much. But there was something steady in his presence, something comforting in a way she hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just her lawyer. He was a man who understood her pain. He had seen her at her lowest and never once judged her. And when the world was too loud, when her memories clawed their way back in the middle of the night, his voice was the only thing that calmed her. And for the first time in a long, long time, Lana felt safe. Noah's gaze lingered a little longer than before. His hand would brush against hers. Less like friendship, more like something else. Their conversations, once full of legal jargon, now carried a different kind of weight. A quiet depth neither of them could ignore. There were moments, shared silences, glances held just a second too long, that spoke louder than any confession ever could. Lana had spent so much time rebuilding her life, she hadn't noticed how much she had come to rely on Noah. But now, as he sat beside her, steady, calm, unwavering, she realized something. He was no longer just her lawyer. He was someone who had slowly become much more. But Lana couldn't let herself think about that. Not yet. There was still so much to do, so much to prove. But as she looked at Noah, a part of her began to believe. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Brooke's life had ended, at least the one she used to know. She was sentenced, and the public, starving for justice. Her once glamorous lifestyle had become nothing but a distant memory. Now, the woman who once reigned over luxury and deception was behind bars, paying for the crimes she had committed. And Cole? He had faded into infamy. Once adored by millions, he was now just another disgraced man whose empire had been built on lies. The public turned on him. His power, his wealth, his influence, all of it gone, reduced to whispers and headlines. Lana watched it all from a distance. She didn't feel joy at their downfall, but she didn't feel sorrow either. She had asked for justice, and justice had come. But it wasn't the kind that brought satisfaction. It was the kind that felt inevitable. They had done this to themselves. Lana had been the victim, the one who suffered most. But now, she was free. Free from the chains they had wrapped around her life. She had moved on, to a different life, in a different place. A place untouched by the shadows of Cole and Brooke. She didn't need revenge anymore. What she had now was something better. Peace. And that was more than enough. Lana stepped into her new home, her heart swelling with pride. It was everything she had dreamed of, peaceful, beautiful and completely hers. No more chaos, no more fear. Just Lana. And hope. The sound of Hope's soft breathing, the warmth of Noah's hand resting gently on her back. These were the only things that mattered now. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. It was over. The war, the betrayal, the heartbreak. All of it behind her now. She looked down at Hope, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Then up at Noah. He stood beside her, calm and steady, a quiet strength in his eyes. There was something about him, something that felt like home. He didn't need to say anything. His presence told her everything. As they stepped further into the house, Lana whispered softly, "Let's design a new life, from the ground up." There was no looking back. No more wondering if things would ever get better. They already had. The future was waiting, bright, full of possibilities. Lana had fought for this moment, and now she was going to live it. Her past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. She was no longer the woman who had been broken. She was the woman who had rebuilt her life from the ashes. And as Hope's tiny fingers curled around hers, Lana smiled through tears. This wasn't just a new beginning, it was everything. This was her new beginning, and nothing would ever take it away from her. Dear friend, life will break you. It will bend you to your knees in ways you never imagined. But as the Stoics remind us, what stands in the way becomes the way. Lana's story is a quiet testament to that truth. Betrayed, bruised, and left for dead, not just physically but emotionally, she didn't rise with fury. She rose with purpose. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove to herself that peace is not the absence of pain, but the presence of self-worth. You may be walking through your own storm, questioning your strength. But please, hold on. Healing isn't loud. It's slow, soft, and often starts with a whisper inside you that says, "Start again." And when you do, don't just rebuild, redefine. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to become next. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling powerful stories that remind us we're never truly alone.